he did talk about how it had a lot of prime beachfront potential to become a resort a resort destination. And not only that, there have been groups of prominent Israeli business people who have drawn up plans that have been also been discussed by the ruling parties to create Dubai-like islands in the sea off of the coast to put hotels on.
Tony Blair is advising the White House on Gaza. President Trump held a major meeting yesterday about the future of the enclave, featuring the former Prime Minister. The US Assistant Editor has the story on the front page of today's Times. We can talk to him now. David Charter, very good evening from... very good afternoon. I'm wishing my life away from us in London town. It's such a good story, David, and I think an awful lot of people, their eyebrows will have gone higher than a hair clip at reading it. What exactly is known about the meeting? And presumably because there aren't any photographs available, are people pretty annoyed in both camps that we're talking about it?
Yeah, well, it's good morning from here in Washington, actually. The meeting was kept very quiet yesterday. I went over to the White House a couple of times, actually, to try and find out who was attending and how long it went on for. And there really was a veil of secrecy thrown over this one. It was exposed, first of all, by a reporter from Axios news website, said that both Sir Tony Blair and Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, who's married to Ivanka and has a lot of interest in the Middle East, they'll both be attending. And this has been confirmed, although that no details of the meeting were given out, apart from to say they really wanted to play it down. They were saying it was a routine policy consultation exercise. It wasn't really a big decision-making meeting. It was a consultation on all we know of Trump's plans for Gaza, which he set out way back in February when Benjamin Netanyahu became the first national overseas leader to visit the Oval Office. And you remember President Trump was talking about a riviera for the Middle East and America taking over the Gaza Strip to rebuild it as a resort destination. We've heard nothing to the contrary from the Tony Blair Institute, for example. They were very reluctant to talk about it as well when we contacted them yesterday, and so far they're refusing to give any details of what Sir Tony is telling Donald.
Which just makes people even more intrigued, shall we use that word. I know that the Tony Blair Institute, you've written about this in your piece too, seems to be keen to say that Tony Blair has never authored or promoted a plan, or the Institute has never promoted a plan to relocate or displace Gazans. But obviously Jared Kushner presumably does back Trump's vision of, as you've described it, this riviera, which immediately people pointed out would have to displace and relocate Gazans.
That's right. We know that Kushner has talked in the not too distant past about the real estate prospects of Gaza. And talk before the Trump administration came into power. Actually, he did talk about how it had a lot of prime beachfront potential to become a resort destination. And not only that, there have been groups of prominent Israeli business people who have drawn up plans that have also been discussed by the ruling parties to create Dubai-like islands in the sea off of off of the coast to put hotels on
Yeah.
as a destination. So those things are in the air, but we don't know how far down the line they're going at the moment. Because as Steve Witkoff, the special envoy, Donald Trump's property magnate friend, who is the peace envoy for the Middle East, he has reminded us that it'll take months, years, really, to make the land safe, because there's so much ordnance needs to be cleared. All the basic facilities required for modern life, sewage, electricity, water, it all needs to be refashioned and remade because it's a devastated area.
Yeah.
It's been absolutely smashed to smithereens.
How much is known, David, about the exact work that Tony Blair has done over the last, let's just say, 10 years in the Middle East? And the TBI is the Tony Blair Institute. That's not a government body. It doesn't have to tell us everything it does it?
No, well, it doesn't. It's involved in consultations extensively on potential projects for the Middle East, because that's clearly, Sir Tony was a Middle East envoy for a high-powered group involving the EU, the US, the UN, and Russia for 8 years immediately after he left office in 2007, I think it was. And so he's got extensive contacts. He's actually had several meetings, actually more like a dozen meetings over the years, with a gentleman who is now very senior in Hamas, he's not a Gazan, but he plays a very senior role in that organization. And so Blair does know people very well on both sides, and he's got his finger in a lot of pies over there. But it's even more frustrating for us because they won't tell us what he's actually promoting. Apart from, he did give an interview late last year to Politico, where he talked about how it couldn't be Hamas and it couldn't be Israel that ends up running the Gaza Strip. It had to be a third organization. But what he hasn't said, intriguingly, is whether this should be the Palestinian Authority, which is the elected Palestinian leadership on the West Bank, not in Gaza, of course. Hamas won the election in 2006 and have been in power ever since. So we don't know exactly what this third authority is that he thinks should run the place.
Yeah. Well, let's park all of that just for now. There's so much else to talk about, David. Elsewhere in the White House, there's been this firing of the head of the Centre for Disease Control and Prevention. What would be the nearest comparative body that we would have in the UK, which would help us to understand who this person is, Susan Menares, and how important the position?
Oh, well, it's a very senior role, like a very senior bureaucrat at the Department of Health, or NICE, that is deeply involved in setting the medical agenda for the country. So verifying what drugs can be used, and the schedule for vaccinations, for example, which seems to be at the heart of this, because Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you'll remember, is the health secretary in America. He's a vaccine skeptic. He's talked about how he believes vaccines cause autism. And one of the things he's planning is a big press conference next month to reveal his findings of an inquiry into the causes of autism, the recorded cases of which have been going up and up and up over the last 20 years. And so we expect to hear some sort of link with vaccination coming from him. But the immediate trigger that may have played a role in the disputes at this body, the Centers for Disease Control, which has seen not only the head forced out after barely a month in office, but I think it's four other senior officials have resigned in protest. All resigned in protest last night. And in a really detailed resignation letter, one of those is the director of the National Centre for Immunisation. And so he's been saying that it's the changes made by RFK that are behind this. He can't support them anymore because RFK fired there's an advisory body on what vaccinations should be given and when to different age groups and different vulnerabilities, etc. Well, RFK Jr. fired them all in May and put his own people in who are vaccine skeptic. And so what then happened was the new advice on COVID vaccinations was that they're no longer advised for healthy children. So those up to the age of 18 are no longer advised to get any COVID vaccination. And that has a big knock-on effect in America because it means that some of the insurance companies won't reimburse parents for if they do get their kids vaccinated, and that's going to be a deterrent cost of I think I saw it was over $100, $150 maybe per vaccination. So you can see how this has is going to have a major effect on this year's vaccination program for COVID.
Just a very quick word as well, David, on the political response to the school shooting in Minneapolis. I mean, sometimes the simple truth of these events is that what you hear the politicians say, you have heard many times over, and how awful that must be for the families involved to think that, yep, here comes another press conference, nothing's ever going to change.
Well, we've got an added ingredient in this one of a transgender shooter, so you can only imagine how the culture wars have kicked off in America about this. On the left, we've got the mayor of Minneapolis, a Democrat, saying anyone who tells you this isn't about weak gun policies is wrong, and it's all about tightening up who owns guns. And on the right, you've got anyone who tells you this isn't to do with mental health and the pressure that and confusion that young people are feeling about gender identity is lying to you, and it's all about that. So we've got a fantastic row as usual about what's really to blame for this, and as usual, nothing will get done to make things better in America.